The night the world shifted for Emily Carter began with the ringing sound of a gunshot slicing through the quiet hum of the Sunrise Diner. It was the kind of moment that rips the air open, sudden, violent, impossible to mistake, and she felt it in her bones before she even turned to see the masked man storm through the door with fury blazing in his eyes. The diner, usually filled with warmth, clatter, and the soft comfort of routine, became a cage of fear in an instant. Plates froze midair, conversations died in trembling throats, and every heartbeat seemed to echo across the tiled floor. Emily had always believed danger lived far away from her small-town life, yet here it was, aimed directly at the man sitting quietly in the corner booth, the sharply dressed stranger who had walked in just 15 minutes before. In the next few seconds, instincts she never knew she had would push her into the center of a nightmare that would bind her fate to his forever. Right arrow if you believe in kindness, courage, and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to channel name. It helps the channel grow and brings more stories like this to life. Emily had worked at the Sunrise Diner for 6 years. The job wasn't glamorous, but it kept a roof over her head after her mother passed, and gave her a place where she felt needed. People came for the food, but they stayed for her warmth. She never had much, but she gave much, because giving made the loneliness quieter. That night, she had no idea she was serving coffee to a billionaire CEO whose life was on the edge of catastrophe. She only knew him as the quiet man with tired eyes, a traveler passing through who seemed to be carrying the weight of an entire world on his shoulders. When the robber stormed in, shouting threats and waving the gun, everyone else froze. But something inside Emily snapped into motion. Later, she would try to explain it as instinct, but deep down, she knew it came from a place shaped by loss. She had watched life slip away from the one person she loved most, powerless to stop it. So when she saw the gun swing toward the man in the corner booth, she couldn't bear the thought of watching another life end while she stood still. Without thinking, she grabbed the heavy metal coffee pot and swung it with every ounce of strength she possessed. The clang echoed, the gun dropped, and chaos erupted. The masked man stumbled, recovered, and tried to grab Emily, but another customer had already rushed forward to help her pin him down until the police arrived. The man she had saved stared at her with disbelief, gratitude, and an emotion he couldn't name. By the time the flashing red and blue lights faded from the diner's windows, Emily was shaking so hard she could barely stand. She insisted she was fine, just rattled, and brushed off the stranger's attempts to thank her. She didn't know who he was. She didn't know that the moment she stepped between him and death, she changed the trajectory of her entire life. She only knew she needed to finish her shift, wipe the tables, and pretend that her world hadn't just nearly collapsed. The man left quietly, promising to return in the morning to thank her properly. Emily thought little of it. In her life, people rarely returned. She expected his gratitude would fade by sunrise, swallowed by the busyness of whatever life he lived. What she didn't know was that he spent the entire night awake, replaying the moment she risked everything for a stranger. He had lived decades building empires, signing deals, and navigating boardrooms, but no one had ever put themselves in front of danger for him. No one had ever cared enough. Morning came like any other in the small town, soft light breaking through the windows, the smell of bacon sizzling, the sound of mismatched chairs scraping against the floor. Emily tied her apron, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, and stepped into another day of repetition. She didn't expect anything extraordinary. She didn't expect anyone to remember her bravery. She didn't expect the world to shift. But then 4 black SUVs pulled up outside the diner, sleek, imposing, and utterly out of place in her quiet corner of the world. Conversations stopped. Forks hovered midair. Even the coffee machine seemed to pause. People turned toward the windows, eyes wide with speculation. Emily felt the breath leave her lungs as the doors opened and men in tailored suits stepped out, their presence commanding, polished, unmistakably powerful. The man she saved emerged behind them, no longer the tired traveler she remembered, but someone else entirely, someone everyone suddenly recognized. He was Alexander Hale, the billionaire CEO whose face graced magazine covers, financial networks, and business headlines. Emily had saved one of the most powerful men in the country, without even knowing his name. As he walked toward the diner, something soft flickered in his expression, something vulnerable, almost hopeful. People whispered, gasped, craned their necks, but he didn't glance at anyone else. His eyes found Emily immediately. He stepped inside with a reverence that didn't match his reputation and sat at her counter as if he had been coming there his whole life. She couldn't find her voice at first. She had spent years feeling invisible, overlooked, and forgotten by a world that moved too fast. Yet here he was, looking at her like she was the only person in the room. That morning changed everything. Not instantly, not magically, but gradually, like the slow unraveling of a tightly wound knot. Alexander returned to the diner every single day after that. Sometimes he came alone, sometimes with security, sometimes with nothing but questions about her life. He seemed drawn to her quiet resilience, the way she laughed through exhaustion, the way she found joy in small things despite carrying invisible burdens. Emily didn't understand why someone of his status wanted to be anywhere near her simple, ordinary world. She didn't know he found peace in her presence, something he hadn't felt in decades. But change brought complications. Rumors spread quickly through the town, whispers that she was chasing his money, gossip that turned friends into distant acquaintances. Emily felt isolated, torn between gratitude for the connection forming between them and the fear that she didn't belong in his world. And Alexander faced his own storms, board members concerned about distractions, media hunting for angles, and rivals waiting to twist the narrative. Yet every morning, no matter what pressure he faced, he walked into the diner and sat at her counter like it was the only place where he could breathe. Weeks passed, and their bond deepened, rooted in sincerity, vulnerability, and the moment she risked her life for his. He discovered she had dreams she'd buried long ago, dreams of studying nursing, of helping others, of building a life she felt proud of. She learned that beneath his wealth and influence was a man who feared being valued only for what he owned, never for who he was. They found comfort in each other's truths, understanding in each other's silences. Then came the hardest chapter, the moment when Alexander's world collided violently with hers. A disgruntled former employee, seeking revenge, targeted Alexander and followed him to the diner. The threat was real, escalating, and dangerous. Emily found herself caught in fear again, reliving the terror of the night of the robbery. But this time, she wasn't alone. Alexander protected her as fiercely as she had once protected him. They navigated the danger together, leaning on each other in ways neither imagined possible. After the threat passed, Alexander made a decision that would change everything. One quiet evening, after the diner had closed and Emily was wiping the last table, he told her he wanted to invest in her dreams, not as charity, not as repayment, but as a partnership in the life he hoped they could build. He offered to fund her education, help her mother's old house get repaired, and remove the burdens she had carried for years. Emily cried, not out of joy alone, but from the fear of accepting something she didn't feel she deserved. But Alexander's sincerity broke through every wall she had built. Slowly, she allowed herself to believe she was worthy of good things. She pursued nursing school, working part-time at the diner, building a life she had once thought impossible. Alexander remained by her side, not as a savior, but as someone who cherished her strength. Their bond grew into something unspoken, powerful, and deeply human. As months turned into a year, Emily's world transformed. Not because of wealth, not because of luxury, but because she had finally discovered her own worth, and because someone saw in her what she had never seen in herself. The town that once doubted her came to admire her resilience, her determination, her heart. And the diner, once a simple workplace, became the birthplace of a story that reminded everyone of humanity's power to change lives in unexpected moments. And on the anniversary of the night she saved him, Alexander returned to the diner, not with bodyguards, not with reporters, but alone, carrying nothing but gratitude and affection in his eyes. He asked her to step